What inspired you to start Plex Research, and how did your journey into AI for drug discovery begin?
So I was always really frustrated by the amount of data in this space, the large scale data sets.
Can you unpack how your technology works and what makes it different from other platforms in the market? Welcome to LifeScience Insight Podcast, where we bring in the insightful conversations with the minds shaping the future of pharma and healthcare. In this episode, we are discussing about the role of AI in drug discovery with Doug, the CEO and founder of Plex Research. Welcome to the show. Let me start with the first question.
Mhm.
What inspired you to start Plex Research, and how did your journey into AI for drug discovery begin?
So I was always really frustrated by the amount of data in this space, the large scale data sets, and how little of it we actually were able to use. And I would go to meeting after meeting, presentation after presentation, where you had one big data set, and then people would say, well, what if you integrate it with a second data set? And great. And then someone else will raise their hand. What about this other data set? Oh, yeah, that would also be interesting. What about this third data set? And there was no way to actually integrate all of them, right? It was really just those one or two or three data sets was such a tiny fraction of what was out there. So I started looking for solutions. How could you actually use more of the data, a lot more of the data, and hit upon the idea of repurposing the sorts of algorithms that are used in search engine algorithms. Because actually, this is a solved problem in a different space in web search. You can bring together all kinds of really diverse data and find it and use it. So that was really the inspiration is, using the data that we have, where I know there's a tremendous amount of value, but using it much better than we're using it now.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But what gap did you see in the traditional drug discovery process that your research company was built to fill in?
Yeah, it's really that data reuse, but this is actually at a really massive scale. So the publication process that we have has not kept up with technology, right? So we have technology that generates absolutely massive amounts of data, huge data sets, but our publication process is around stories. It's the text of the story, and as you take your data, you find some interesting stories there. But meanwhile, there's thousands, even maybe hundreds of thousands or millions of data points that don't make it into the story, and they just get deposited into that supplemental file, never to be seen again. Even if they go into a database, there's thousands of databases. So that was the motivation to really figure out how can you access the data? Is there a way to really use it? Because it's real data, it's good data, there's value in there, but it's just not being tapped into. So that was really the motivation to build this platform. And by using a different approach, by taking this sort of inspiration from Google, from PageRank, that kind of the algorithm that made Google what it is today, that sort of conquered web search. That algorithm, shockingly, has not been applied outside of web search, or not very much, and certainly not
Yeah.
to a significant extent in the biomedical field. So it was just a huge opportunity. Take that world famous, incredible algorithm, apply it to biomedical data, and see what we can find. And that's really where we're filling in.
Yeah, that's nice, right? So, what type of data normally your research
Mhm.
fills in?
Yeah, so it's incredibly diverse. So it's all, it's biomedical data, but
Okay.
it's also chemistry. And, included in that is chemistry, pharmacology, bioactivities, so chemical structure, and multiomics. So all kinds of omics. We have transcriptomics, proteomics, genomics, all these things
Genomics. Okay.
uh, across all kinds of areas, right? Because any one of those fields, proteomics could be protein levels, could be protein interactions, could be, protein stability changes, sets of data. There's all kinds of different data types. And we can use essentially any data type can be integrated
Okay.
and used. So you can really see, what does all of that data have to say about your particular question?
Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
But can you unpack how your technology works and what makes it
Mhm.
different from other platform in the market?
Yeah, so we're radically different from everything else that's out there, right? And we're in this
Okay.
space now where there are just incredible numbers of AI solutions, right? It's this very noisy space. And essentially every AI solution is some form of ML. It's become almost
Yeah.
synonymous. It's machine learning based, right?
Machine learning. Yes.
What we're doing is not machine learning based. we can integrate and use sort of leverage what's being done in the ML space. But our approach is totally different. So again, based on centrality algorithms, so basically search engine type algorithms. So the way Google found web pages, right? So we're not learning, we're not training and predicting. What we're doing is we're
Mm.
searching data that's out there and identifying where it converges, right? So given a question, what's the target of my molecule, or what disease does my gene signature most map to,
Gene
or what
signature,
biology does it
yes.
map to, right? You can search all the data, all the world's data, and
Mm.
by all the world's data, we're not talking about the text of papers, right? So we're not talking about, again, searching stories, and we're talking about
Mm.
the raw data, relatively raw data.
Right.
You can look at all of that and say, okay, this is what it all has to say about your gene signature, your compound. So we can have an answer that is
Mm.
the answer that is best supported by kind of all the world's data,
Mm.
and we rank them, and that becomes the top answer. And then, unlike Google, we can actually expose the underlying data. We can say, this is the winner. So here is the answer to your question that has the most experimental support. And then here is that experimental support. Like, here are all the data points, and here's where we found them, right? With links back to their sources. So we're not making predictions, we're surfacing the answer that has the most supporting data and showing you the data, right? So it's
Okay.
really quite different than these ML-based approaches.
How does your platform balance the need for explainability of AI with the complexity of biological systems?
So that's one of the strengths of this approach, is that we're not, we can incorporate all the complexity of biology into the
Into
analysis,
yeah.
because we're not, so with a predictive method, if you're building a model, you have to have some representation of the underlying biology and
Mm.
your understanding of it and what's happening. And that is really, really difficult. What we're doing, we're saying, okay, that's not the exercise. The exercise is, let's understand where the data points to. Let's just take the data we
Mm.
have, and let's identify the data that's relevant and the answer that's most supported, and then expose it with the data. So that the scientist is in the loop, looking at the
Yes.
data and then
Mm.
evaluating the complexity at that point, right? Here's our answer. Here's the relatively complex data that supports it. Let's look at the data, understand that biological complexity, right, for what it is. We don't have to build a model of it. We just have to read the papers like we do normally,
Okay.
uh, inspect the data, and that's what we use to understand the answer.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Mhm.
With all the AI going on right now, what role does generative AI play in your drug discovery pipeline? So, if you can answer some of those questions, that would be really great.
Sure, yeah. So generative AI is, I think it took most people by surprise how
Mm.
advanced it
Yeah.
became so quickly. So our technology we developed long before that, and then when generative AI came along, suddenly there's a way. Well, the first implementation was, let's use generative AI to explain what we're finding, to analyze the findings that we're bringing back. So we'll run a search, and then we'll have an assistant, a large language model assistant, that looks at the search and then generates, text, a response, summarizing or analyzing our results. And
Mm.
that was really the first step. What we realized then was that it could do far more than that, because we had trained it, or at least not trained as in adjusted weights, but we had given it prompts explaining Plex. So now
Mm.
the large language model understands, okay, this is what Plex is about, our approach, how it works, how to interpret things. And we found that it was able to propose experiments as well, propose searches and propose analyses. So we could
Yes.
ask it, here's the question I want to answer. How would I do that using this
Mm.
system, using Plex? And it would give pretty good answers. So we
Okay.
realized the system can design experiments, or searches and these
Such
analyses.
as.
It could also interpret the results, and it's not too hard to then fill in the running of the searches, like have it run
Mm.
searches. So now it has a complete loop where it can plan, run, and analyze the searches, and then plan another one based on the results, and kind of keep going. So
Mm.
what happened was, we realized that the generative AI, these large language models, now allow us to build an autonomous system
Mm.
where we can just say, go find, make a new discovery,
Okay.
and it will go off and do that, tell you what it's doing, show you the data that it found, and show you its conclusions.
Okay. Okay. That's good. So, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced in building the business that operates at the intersection of biotech and AI?
Yeah, so a lot of challenges, a lot of challenges. It's hard to be in between
Yeah.
spaces, right? Because you
Yes.
have really different audiences which need really different messages.
Mm.
So informatics folks, biologists, chemists, leadership, business, all these people need different messages. So I think part of it was certainly the messaging. Uh, More recently, it's been that the explosion of AI is kind of a mixed blessing.
Mix, yes,
It's great that there's so much excitement and it's largely merited, but at the same time, there's a lot of noise, and we have a unique approach that
yes.
really is, radically different from what everyone else is doing. So it's been a huge challenge to explain that, right? Because we sound like we're, just another company that's
Another company,
through
yeah.
AI, using the word and but we're really quite different and we're synergistic with, other approaches, but we're quite a different approach, and it really is a transformative approach. And I think
Mm.
we will get into that as we go here. But so it's really been about the messaging above the AI noise, uh,
Noise,
to
yes.
explain that, and then also just on the business side, just messaging, about where we fit into, how we help and where we fit into, our customers' business processes and scientific processes.
Yeah, that's very important, right?
Yeah.
And everyone is talking about AI, and we need to know how to fit in the customer business process. That is very important.
hmm
So that's where we all working towards that.
Yeah, and that's a different answer for depending on who you're talking to, right?
Mm.
If you're talking to the project leader or the CSO,
Mm.
that's a different conversation than the
Exactly.
CIO, the CTO, where they want to know how you scale the systems, and even if and they often don't understand, the value we're bringing, because often
Mm.
I would say with our approach, the core value is really scientific. It's that the platform we can discover actually novel things, because again, we're
Mm.
not we're not limited to the text of papers. This is raw data we're looking at. So we can come up with truly novel discoveries supported by experimental data. Uh, and so that the value is really the science. So if we
Mm.
come over and we're being sort of interviewed by the CIO, right, who's focused on the informatics, and the questions are about, number of data points and scale and performance and number of users and these things, which are just not the point, right?
Mm.
That perhaps there's some other platform that has just as many data points. The difference is we're discovering brand new things and putting together data packages with
Mm.
experimental
Mm.
data supporting these new things. And the other platform is just recommending a paper at the end of the
Mm.
day, right? Or something,
Yes.
so whatever it might be, but that's the metric is the science we deliver. It's not the informatics, pure informatics per se.
How do you navigate partnerships with pharma companies, academic institutions, or the regulators?
Yeah, so very different ways. I mean, we tend to engage first with the scientific folks. So at the project level, often we do also engage at a higher level, at sort of the executive level, strategic level, um, about where what we're doing fits into a bigger picture. And it actually can be difficult to bridge that. So if we come in and we're focused on a project, the cases where people are excited about what we did and they know we did this great job with this one project, and we have to tell the story that, well, we're glad, and we enjoy working on this project. What we did for you, we can do for the whole company, right? In lots of different ways. Because it's a very general purpose system. It's very a universal capability. So uh, it's very hard to then jump from that project level up to a more strategic level, because often it's not their job to look
Yes.
at the strategic level, right? They've got to get their project done. And the strategic folks don't always appreciate, even if they appreciate the good job we did at that level,
There it is.
explaining how this goes across the company without without sort of getting, sort of stuck with the CIO, let's say, and I'm bashing CIOs a little bit, they
Mm.
have a tough job being in a scientific organization. But if we get thrown to the CIO who doesn't understand the scientific value of what we're delivering, that can be a challenge, right? So it's just navigating those different
Navigating
perspectives. Um, yeah, so there's really not one size
this
fits all
one
answer.
says,
I just
yeah.
mentioned though on the academic side, we did start engaging with academics last year in
Oh,
2024.
okay.
And we do have some papers coming out,
Mm.
hopefully pretty soon. One with the Broad Institute that should be coming out soon. Fingers crossed. Last stages of review.
Okay.
And then we have some papers in preparation with the University of Michigan, and others are working on with Harvard. So, so the academic partnerships have been with individual labs, addressing their questions, and with the aim of helping them publish and make discoveries.
Okay, good. Can you share a real world example where the Plex AI made a breakthrough or a significant accelerator in drug discovery?
Yeah, so there have been so many. Up until 2024, we really only worked with companies, so everything was
Okay.
top secret. I mean, there are
Mm.
some things, if you look, you can go search. There are some things that
Mm.
got out, that were where we did some joint projects that were presented and that kind of thing. But so we started working with academia recently last year. Uh, we do have some really cool things coming out there. So, for example, I think that one of the ones that's a really clear breakthrough, really striking, was the work with the University of Michigan with Johnny Sexton's lab up in University of
Mm.
Michigan. And they had run phenotypic screens, identified compounds that reversed hepatic steatosis in this phenotypic screen, and some of their hits actually did this also in mice, uh,
Mm.
worked in mice, and they had compounds with this activity, but
Okay.
no idea how they worked, right? And they actually
Mm.
ran the initial screen back in 2018, and had still been trying to figure out, for years, how do these things work?
Mm.
And we had an introductory call. We asked them just paste the structure into the chat window, and they did, and we put it into our system, and immediately, seconds later, showed them here's the likely target, DPP4
Mm.
and the HSD family, hydroxysteroid desaturase, so in the steroid pathway,
Okay.
and both plausible. DPP4 is very easy to test. They actually ordered the test while we're on the phone, I believe. Weeks
Mm.
later, they confirmed it. And they presented those results in London at the LRIG meeting in London in 2024. And recently, we heard they also confirmed the HSD prediction, essentially. So that will be, that manuscript, that should probably be a couple papers. They're under preparation right now. So we took something where it'd been a mystery for years how these compounds worked, and we're able to very quickly uh, figure out, get to the answer, quickly confirmed as well. So we really can get to the bottom of these mechanistic questions in a way that sheds light on the disease process. In this case,
Mm.
maybe there's polypharmacology here where you're hitting two targets. Both are plausible for hepatic steatosis. So shedding light on the disease process, on therapeutic development, because now we have a compound where we understand its likely mechanism. If we don't like that compound class, we could have a target-based screen against one or both of these other targets. So it opens up potential therapeutic strategies and a better understanding of the disease mechanism.
Uh, where in the drug discovery life cycle do you see the most value being unlocked by AI today?
So, well, I'll speak for our platform. I think the platforms that are out there, uh, are so machine learning. There are certain contexts in which it works well, and so there's a lot of kind of niche applications that are spread across the pipeline. I'd say with our approach, there's really a much more broad applicability, uh, and because we're surfacing data and we have this, it's a transparent approach. It's much easier to integrate into the existing pipelines because there's not a question about did you validate a model? What do these predictions mean? What was the training set? What all these sort of complexities that come with machine learning approaches. What we're doing is just providing data. We are identifying hypotheses and
Mm.
by
Okay.
definition the ones that are best supported, and we're providing data. So it stands on its own, and this could be to your question about the pipeline. This could be really anywhere in the pipeline. So we've done a lot of things around certainly early discovery, including the example I gave. Here's a compound coming out of phenotypic screens or in lead op, and we can shed light on, the structure activity relationships, on mechanism, all these things, and also way down the pipeline. And we've done a lot of this precision medicine applications where maybe drug is already on the market. We know the target, and the question is, what's the right patient population? So we do a lot of work around identifying disease mechanism, therapeutic mechanism, and therefore patient selection criteria, including biomarkers. So sort of fleshing out and nailing down more concretely the patient selection and kind of the precision medicine strategy.
Okay. Good. The drug development is a highly regulated industry. How
Mhm.
does Plex ensure its AI solution comply with evolving regulatory standards?
Yeah, that's a huge strength of this approach. So the transparency, because we don't need to do anything particularly new, right? So we're providing data, right? So again, the data stands on its own. So when the regulatory agency asks, okay, what support do you have for your conclusion? That's what we have. We're providing the data that supports that conclusion directly. So there doesn't really need to be any kind of special rules or adjustments because we're not building a model. So there's nothing to validate in particular, nothing, everything is the kind of data they're used to seeing. We're just adding tremendous efficiency in identifying that data, identifying the hypothesis, and providing it in a clear way. So it's really a great fit, not only for scientists, but also for regulators.
Regulatories. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Do you see any new ethical framework for AI in life sciences today?
So I don't think there needs to be I hope there doesn't need to be a new ethical framework.
New
I hope it's more of a question. I hope it's the same
question.
ethics. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be questions we had thought of before, or maybe we thought of it, but we didn't realize we'd actually have to deal with this because there's a lot of things about AI that's very surprising. Um, so I think on the first level, our ethics are still our ethics. That's not changing. And then we have to keep an eye on what are some issues that AI brings up that maybe we weren't expecting. I definitely, again, the advantage of our approach is that transparency. So it's much easier to fit into any existing framework because there's nothing
It's
new in
nothing
some
new.
sense,
Yes.
right? When you start talking about more black box methods, machine learning methods, where you don't know how it made the decision, right?
Yes.
In that sense,
Hmm.
it's black box. Then there's maybe an additional ethical question about reliability. How much confidence can you have in what the system is providing to you, right? There definitely adds another burden, which could get more and more onerous as these models get more complex, right? If you require the
Yes.
model to tell you how it arrived at its conclusion and on what data is it based, that is non-trivial, especially with the larger machine learning models. So I think ML, certainly there are things, as I say, challenges back to the technology that will need to be addressed to comply with our ethical standards. And because our approach is transparent, a lot of that is taken care of, is that it's not something different from what we already deal with.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
So, looking ahead 5 to 10 years,
Yeah.
how do you see the AI transformation happening in the biotech and pharmaceutical industries?
This is where I really have something to say because I think, like I said,
Yes.
I put it together for you that
Yeah.
you have all the pieces here for an autonomous system,
Mm.
right? And not just autonomous. I guess you could have anything go off and run forever, right? So the excitement isn't just that there's autonomy. It's
Mm.
that the system can go off and find some things that are truly new, right? Because again, we're not focusing on the text of papers, things that people are writing about that they already know. That is
Mm.
in there. But the vast
Mm.
majority of what we're looking at is relatively raw data that we've collected, thrown in databases, spread across the
Yes.
world, no idea what's in there,
Exactly.
going in and finding things we really didn't know, right?
No. Right.
But nevertheless, we have data that supports these, right?
Mm.
So you have a system that's autonomous that finds truly novel things, new discoveries that we didn't know,
Mm.
uncovers experimental data supporting them so we can believe in them or we can understand them, right? So these
Mm.
are
Yes.
verifiable discoveries, right? Um, and and it's autonomous, right? So now you can say you can just let it run, and the longer it runs, the better things it finds. It basically covers more data, uncovers more data,
Mm.
and the answer, sort of the hypotheses or the putative cures that it's
Mm.
discovering, right? The
Right.
longer it runs, the more supporting data it has for those cures, and therefore the better they are, right?
Right.
So I think what we're going to learn is that
Mm.
a lot of the things where we think we know very little or nothing, we in
Nothing.
fact know a lot, or
A lot.
the data knows a lot anyway.
Yeah.
And we're going to now suddenly know a lot. So like if you think of the internet, if you remember far back enough, before there was Google, there was, the internet was plenty big, but we couldn't find anything. And then Google comes along and now you can find anything. And I think it's going to be that kind of feeling that, we have unbelievable amounts of data. I just did a back of the envelope for a paper I was writing. Maybe 500 trillion data points was the back of the envelope, number of data points.
Mm.
And I think maybe it's ballpark, but it's really hard to say. But it's a massive number of data points that are just in the public domain. And there's a lot in there. And we're going to suddenly, just like we did, when Google came along back in the day, we're going to have this aha moment where we realize we know the answers to all these things, and here they are, and here's the data that supports them. And again, that's going to be autonomous. So you'll have, I think a lot of that is going to start happening within even a year, because we
Mm.
actually have a prototype system today. So I think within a year, it's really going to be quite advanced. And I think within 5 years, I think you're going to have really, pretty refined systems that are running on a really massive scale that are giving you actually very reliable answers, very, very compelling answers when you
Yes.
ask it, how do I cure this disease? What is causing the safety issue? Which patient should I treat? A lot of things are going to really be automated and
Automated.
really highly confident answers. And we're going to know why they're the answers as well.
Yes. But do you think will the human element always be a central?
I wouldn't say always. I mean, the word always. I think for a while it certainly will be.
Okay.
But for now, it has to be for now, and for certainly the near future, it really has to be because the approach we're taking, I think necessarily is we're saying, look, we don't have enough data, and we're not probably not smart enough to model the whole system, to know the whole thing that's going on, right? And in fact, we don't need to solve that problem, which is maybe more the point. Instead, the problem to solve that's more tractable is we do have a lot of data. So
Mm.
how about rather than try to model the system, we say, let's look at all the data and see what
Mm.
is the best answer we have in there, right? So that's the
Mm.
approach that we're taking. So there's still the human in the loop because it gives you the best answer, the
Mm.
best, quote unquote, best answer with the most amount of data. And then ultimately the scientist then has to say, well, that's a lot of data,
Lot of data.
data points maybe, but how confident does that make us? And that requires scientific judgment. Does the kind of data it's found, in the pattern that it's found in the context that it's found in, how confident does that make us about the particular, our particular question? So for now, there's a scientist in the loop, but when you have a system that's autonomous, but by definition, right, it's running on its own. So I think there's a possibility that at some point that it will need humans far less. I'm not sure when that happens. I'm not entirely confident that will happen, but that's certainly a possibility. So,
Okay. Good. How has your perspective as a leader evolved since starting Plex Research?
yeah, so I don't think it's changed a whole lot. I think
Mm.
my leadership style has always been that I'm focused on the problem. There's a problem that needs to be solved. And if I can tell people about this problem and I can convince people how important it is, what needs to be done, I think people naturally want to be a part of that, and they want to
Yes.
be, well, what can I do? And then it's a negotiation. Well, what can you do? What can you bring? And what do you want to learn? And what do you want? How do you want to help? Right? And so the whole thing becomes you're painting the picture over and over. This is what needs to happen. Right? Doesn't it need to happen?
Yeah.
If they agree it needs to happen, then like what are you going to do about it? Like how are we going to do this? Because I can't
Yeah.
do it alone. Right? So it's that's I don't know how you describe that style, but that's how I
That's kind
think
of,
of it, right?
yeah, that's,
And
yeah, that's true.
yeah,
But what is the one leadership lesson you learned hard way while scaling a deep tech startup?
well, there have definitely been hard lessons. Not everybody acts in good faith. I think everyone comes across that, so that's a hard lesson to learn.
Mm.
So there's definitely that. There's also something that I guess that we all know, which is, the good guy doesn't always win, or the best technology doesn't always win, right? There's a lot of forces that are out there. Marketing is important. All kinds of business things are important. There's an element of luck about how is the market, there's a lot of things that go into success that are not related to how hard you worked or how good the idea is or all the things that you wish it was a
Yes.
meritocracy, right?
Hmm.
But we know that it's not.
Not.
You wish it were a level playing field. It is to some extent, but certainly not completely. And so it can be difficult to admit that or to come to terms with that, because
Yes.
it can be disappointing. You always want want the good guy to win, you want the best technology to win, but
Yes.
that's not the
That's
way the
not
world
happened.
always works. Yeah,
Yes, exactly. That's true. I understand.
yeah.
What next for Plex Research? Any exciting development on horizon you would like to share?
Well, I think there's big things in store, so. And it's that vision. It's that I think what we're sitting on is a truly transformative technology.
Mm,
We're right now a small player. I
mm,
don't think that will last. I think this will break through because if you look at the technology, it's all there, right? If you sat down and said, okay, we have a wish list. We're gonna, people call these moonshots and all these things. Here's our wish list. I wish I had a system that I could tell it, go cure cancer for me. And it would go and it would do things and it would show me what it's doing and it would show me the data that it's finding and it would make progress that I could see and that could be documented and could go to regulators and right, like that's the kind of thing I would dream of.
mm,
And that's what we have or we're close to having, right? We have a system now that's autonomous that you can ask it, you can give it big jobs, and we're not saying that it goes and finishes the jobs. It doesn't go cure cancer, but it does make progress and verifiable progress, and it shows you that. And I don't see any reason why it can't be massively scaled. There's no apparent reason, and
mm,
why it shouldn't get better and better at doing research. The more it's scaled and the more we refine it. So I think really we're going to at some point that message is going to break through that
mm.
this is really something different. This is not just another AI approach, another machine learning approach.
Okay.
Um, it can use machine learning, and I mentioned already Gen AI, and there's lots of ways we can use all kinds of predictive methods and incorporate it into the
Mm,
system so that it's not only supporting data, but it's also supporting algorithms in addition to the data, right?
mm.
But I think we're going to break through. I think people are going to realize that this is actually a transformative approach, and I think we're going to change the industry.
Indigenous, yes, true. That's what everyone is talking about.
Mhm.
We are looking forward for it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the chance to talk to you about it.
What's one piece of advice that you would like to give to all the founders?
So I consider myself a reluctant founder.
Mm,
So I never wanted to start a company. I was never that interested in business. I'm a technology and science person. I love science. I love technology. And I think the company was the best way to get this idea out into the world, and that's what I ended up doing. But I would say to entrepreneurs and people who are entrepreneurial minded that there's a lot of ways to get your ideas out into the world. Uh, starting a company is one of them. There are lots of other ways as well. I've worked in big companies. I used to work at Novartis.
mm,
There are ways to do really amazing things within a big company, and in
mm.
academia, and in government, and all these different ways. So I would say to think really carefully about what it is you're trying to accomplish, and
Mm.
whether a company is really the way to go. Right?
Okay.
There's good and bad
Good
about
and
doing
bad,
a
yes.
company. So know what you want to accomplish, and it might not be the right fit for every idea. So be
Mm.
clear about
Be clear.
what you're trying to accomplish, and what is the right route, the right vehicle for that goal.
Yeah, that's interesting. And thanks for your time. And thanks for spending time in this podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate the chance.
Thank you.